And we are live from the yard here in North Fayette and Robinson here tonight. It is the Andy Toole Radio Show presented by People's Natural Gas, the official natural gas supplier to Robert Morris University and UPMC Sports Medicine. We're here live at the yard in North Fayette every Monday night with Coach Toole to talk about Robert Morris University basketball. It was kind of an up and down weekend, Coach Toole, as we drift back to Thursday night. The Colonials had a slow start, but came back and rallied to beat Bryant by a score of 72-59. The downside of it was a loss to Central Connecticut State, 72-68. Again, slow starts in both of those ball games. Let's talk about starting games as we start the program here tonight at the yard in North Fayette.
Always a tricky thing. You know, you always try and get your team as excited as they possibly can be for the game. You try and get them up emotionally, but you got to get them focused and keep them focused on game plan and execution. And I thought on Thursday night, I thought we started a little bit sluggish. I thought, Brian did a good job. They played a majority zone in that first half, which is, kind of the longest stretch of zone they've played during the course of the year. We had seen in our prep where there was some more zone possessions that they'd played. They played it for some stretches, but they really came out and tried to see how we would handle it, and we did not handle it great. We had some good looks that we did not make. Shot 1 for 13 in the first half from 3, which I thought was a little bit uncharacteristic for us. Not that we are the Golden State Warriors, but we usually shoot a little bit better than that. And then I think on Saturday, I thought we came out with good energy. I thought we played hard. I thought both teams were playing hard early, and no one could seem to find a basket. But I thought that our starts, maybe could have used a little more offensive pace and a little bit better crispness to how we ran offense. And I thought, in both games, as well as we defended early in both games, we did not capitalize and maybe get out to the lead that we would have wanted.
I wanted to ask you about that. With the lack of offense in those two games, the defense was still playing very, very well. And I don't know. I guess if you could put this in a bottle and figure it out and sell it, coaches all over the country would try to buy it from you. But is the defensive effort taking away from the offense?
I don't know. I mean, I think what happens to us sometimes is I think it takes us a little while to adjust to certain defensive looks. And so, obviously Bryant was in the zone on Thursday night. Central Connecticut kind of had a bigger lineup. They really sagged off. They really didn't allow us off ball screen plays to hit our dive guy, hit our roll man, hit our bigs that we usually are able to get. They really challenged our guards to get in the paint and make a play or make a shot, shooting some tough twos. And we didn't do a great job of capitalizing on that, or we didn't do a great job of, making them pay by getting to a second or a third action. And, it's what we were trying to emphasize as we came over to timeouts, as guys were going in and out. When a team is kind of sagging off you and they're daring you to kind of shoot perimeter jump shots, and they're going to contest those because it's, a big lineup that they start Central. And you kind of have to change sides of the floor. You got to swing the sag, and you got to break it down so that then you'll have your driving opportunity, or then they'll be out of position where you can capitalize. And I didn't think we did a good job of doing that early in the game. Both games, defensively, we gave up 31 points in the first half of both games. Our defense did not continue to be as successful in the second half against Central, where we gave up 46 in the second half. Both games, our offense improved in the second half, obviously scoring 42 in the second half against Central and 48 in the second half against Bryant. But, it was, a handful of possessions, like it always is, that we weren't able to take advantage of on Saturday, and Central did, and that's why they were able to win the game.
And it is always just a handful of possessions, a basket here, a turnover there. That's the difference in these ball games that we're seeing throughout the conference.
Well, we've talked about it all, the entire season, about, the parity within the league, the conference basketball in general, how difficult it always is to, be successful at if you're not, completely on top of your game, and how you never know when that possession will arise during the course of the 40 minutes that really will make the difference. We were tied at 57. We were actually up 57-54 against Central. We gave up a 3-point shot to tie it on a defensive coverage breakdown. We then gave up a baseline out of bounds that was, not well defended. They took the lead. We had another coverage breakdown where they made another 3, and then a third coverage breakdown where they had a 3. And, as we watched today with our team, we said these 4 possessions in the game right here, from the 7-minute mark to the 5-minute mark, really became the difference in the game. You go from being up 3 to really being down 5, because we came down and Charles Bain made a 3, but they scored 11 points in that stretch, and all of them were almost on back-to-back-to-back incorrect coverages, whether, a guy helped in when he should have not, off a corner shooter, where a guy, helped in a little bit too far on a roll guy instead of being able to close out to a shooter. Josh Williams fell down, and we didn't get into we didn't scramble well enough, and those are the kind of plays that really just make it hard for you to win games. And as we talked about watching the film, if you're going to compete for a league championship, you can't have a 4-possession stretch where you give up 11 points and expect to be able to win the game. And that's really what happened in the game on Saturday.
You're listening to the Andy Toole Radio Show. We're talking Robert Morris basketball live at the Yard here in North Fayette. Robinson in the Pool City Plaza, just across from Pool City and Target, the newest location of the Yard, as we're here every Monday night. Chris Shovlin, the play-by-play voice of the Colonials, with head coach Andy Toole tonight. A couple of positives over these weekend games. One, you're getting a lot more consistent and stellar play, if I can say that, out of Dante Tracy, your backup point guard, who's healthy again, playing extremely well. He's giving you a lot of minutes, and I know that you went with Tracy quite a bit more in this past game against Central Connecticut.
Yeah, he, I think he's healthy for the first time. It obviously hurt his knee a few weeks back. He missed about 2 weeks of play, and then even when he came back, he was still a little bit ginger, but I think it seems like he's feeling much more like himself. We've talked a lot with him about, making sure that he's being aggressive when he's on the floor. I think he's done a really good job of that. And he's a guy who can get into the lane. He's, as much as John at times is, not that John can't get into the lane, but, I think Dante's a little bit better going downhill and getting into the lane and, being able to make a play. I think he's understanding how people are, where his outlets will be in terms of drop-offs or passes. We saw some really good minutes from him at the end of the FDU game. Last Saturday, he came in that overtime period and, had a couple great assists and a great 3-point shot that sent it to the second overtime period. So I think he's gaining some confidence, and, he's a really hard-working kid. He's a very tough kid, and so, he's the kind of guy you want to have out there. He's not going to back down from anybody. If he sees an opportunity to go out and make an aggressive play, he's going to do that. And that certainly, helped our team in some of these situations where people are giving us some different coverages and they're daring some of our guards to get into the paint and make a play. And, Dante's not afraid to do that at all.
And we'll talk more about Dante in a second and how you found him and how he came from Orlando to sunny Pittsburgh. We'll get to that in a little bit. But just in general, I've noticed that conference play, as it goes along, gets more and more physical, more rough and tumble as the season goes on. I think this season has not been an exception at all. As a matter of fact, maybe it's been even more demonstrative this year.
Well, don't tell our ref assigner, and don't tell don't tell anybody in the NCAA, because they all believe that they're cleaning up all the physicality, and freedom of movement is abound with everybody's joy of college basketball. And I turn on these high major games and it's 52-47, or the Virginia Tech NC State game 47-24, and there's not enough fouls you can call in a game if it's 47-24. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's great about college basketball. It is a little physical. There is going to be some bodies that bang. I mean, not that the NBA is not physical, but a lot of the NBA is entertainment, and they don't want guys. They want scoring, just like in the NFL. They don't want defense. They want touchdowns, and so. In college basketball, you have people that are giving great effort on the defensive side, and there were some very physical plays in the game Saturday. There were some big bodies on both sides that are attacking the rim, that are going for rebounds, that are diving on the floor, and I think that's what people love about the game. At the college level is people still play with that passion, and they're trying to do everything in their power to stop their opponent from scoring. Unlike and not that many people can stop James Harden, but when you go and you dribble 19 times in a row, never pass it, and shoot a sidestep, three-step travel, fadeaway three-point shot, to me that's not necessarily the game of basketball, and I think that's why the college brand is so strong.
All right, let's get off that subject. Go back and talk to Dante Tracy. Here's a kid from Orlando, Florida, who's here at Robert Morris University. I don't know if he even ever saw snow before this season, but let's face it, kids from Florida don't typically get to see stuff like this and don't get to experience winter. But how did you get a guy out of Orlando, as talented as he is, to come here and play for you at Robert Morris?
Well, it's funny. The first day that it was like 45 degrees, he came in. It had to be October, early November, and he's in the locker room and he's starting getting ready for practice. And somebody must have noticed and said, "Hey, what do you got on over there?" And he's like, "Long johns." And they're like, "Long johns? 45 degrees out." So the weather was certainly something new to him. And his mom and his brother were actually up at the games this weekend, and he was telling us today that his brother Jared actually loved the cold weather. And he said he loved the cold weather and kind of enjoyed the snow. And obviously they don't get to experience it very often. But Dante was actually originally committed to go to West Point. He was going to go to the United States Military Academy, and he was going to go to their prep school. So he was up at their prep school this summer, and both of his parents have military backgrounds, and so he was up there and he was getting ready to go. And I guess when he had been recruited, one of the things that he was told was when you graduate from West Point, that if you have the opportunity to play professionally, you'll be able to go and pursue that. And when he got up to the prep school training portion, he learned that you would not necessarily be able to pursue that immediately. You could pursue it 3 years later.
After your military.
Now the military commitment was 5 years, but if you have a professional opportunity, they would let you out in 3.
Gotcha.
And so I guess he started to investigate and realized that was true. He asked the coaches about it, and they were a little bit hesitant to kind of give him the deal. And I guess he called home and he told his parents basically that he was thinking about leaving. And his parents, I think, at first questioned, was he quitting? Was he not tough enough to go through the training? And he really said it had nothing to do with that. And he posed this question to his parents. And for all the parents listening out there, I'm not sure how you would answer this. He said, "Do you want me to stay here and give up on my dream?"
Ooh, wow.
And so I think his parents really kind of understood where he was coming from. And his high school coach and his AAU coach had known Coach Isolino for a while. In fact, 2 years ago, they had come up to a tournament here in Pittsburgh, and they had stopped at campus, and Mike had kind of shown them around. And, we didn't really know what was what, but, we had kind of, through Mike's relationship with Dante's coach, we had kind of followed his team and followed Dante, and his coach and a bunch of friends were down at the Stetson game. And when he decided that he was going to leave, he reached out to Mike to see if we would have interest, and obviously we felt we needed somebody to come in and, provide us with minutes at the point guard position, and that we would love to have him. And we were fortunate enough to get him. The only problem was, I guess, in the United States military, they don't have email, so it took forever for him to get his discharge papers, because they had to go all the way up the chain and all the way back down the chain. And, so we were talking to him in July and August, kind of saying, when do you think you're going to get out of there? And he said, I don't know. He said, every day I just get up at 4:30 in the morning, I do some exercises, I sit here, they have me do a couple odds and ends, I ask if my papers are in, they say no. I go to bed, I get up, I do the same thing again. And he was probably up there for about 10 days knowing he was going to leave. And the Army coaches didn't want him to leave. I guess they had Coach K call him and try and give him the hard sell that he should stay. And
that's pretty tough to turn down.
Yeah, exactly right. I wonder if he asked, "Do you have a scholarship for me at Duke?" That might have been a good question for him. I don't really want to leave unless you have a scholarship for me at Duke, but we're happy to have him. And like I said, he kind of got a little bit of a late start because he couldn't do summer school. He had lost some weight when he was up at his training session for the military prep school, and so when he got here, he was a little bit rusty, but he's a hard-working kid. He's you ask him to do whatever, and he goes and does it, and he loves to be in the gym. He loves to play. He loves to compete, and we love having him in the program.
Absolutely, and you're strong at the point. I mean, let's face it, you've got John Williams as your starter, Dante Tracy your backup, and Savion McEwen's played well too.
He has. He's had moments where he's really been that energy for us off the bench. He's a guy who can score the ball in a hurry. He's a little disappointed in some of his shooting percentages right now, but I still believe he's got some big shots to make for us during the course of this year, and it's been an adjustment for him learning the defensive side of the ball. I think at his junior college there wasn't as much detail to the defensive side, and that's really been the only thing that's held him back a little bit is his lack of urgency sometimes defensively, and he works at it every day. He's another great kid. He's fun to be around. He's fun having the program. He's a great teammate, and that's what you want. You want guys that are good teammates. You want guys that are about the team, and all three of those guys certainly fall in that category.
Yeah, no question about it. This is the Andy Toole Radio Show. We're live at the Yard here in North Fayette in the Robinson area. I'm Chris Shovlin with Coach Toole. We'll continue to talk Robert Morris basketball in just a bit. Come out and join us if you're out and about. We're going to be here until 8 o'clock tonight. And don't forget our Toole Off the Court segment, which is growing in popularity by leaps and bounds, as I keep finding. I mean, Adam Crowley's a big fan. His producer Tom's a big fan.
How can't you be? I mean, really.
They tell me this might be the best segment on their radio station other than the Crowley show itself.
Well, I mean, there's a little bias there, but I didn't know I was this interesting, put it that way.
I think you are. You're fascinating. There's no question about it. Well, the segment's coming up at the bottom of the hour, and of course, you could tweet your questions to Andy, but limit them to things off the court, nothing basketball related, to Ask Toole on Twitter. Do that, okay? We'll be back right after this on ESPN Pittsburgh and the iHeartRadio app, keyword RMU. We're going to jump back on the court with head coach Andy Toole of the Robert Morris University Colonials. It is the Andy Toole Radio Show live from the Yard in North Fayette here in the Pool City Plaza tonight. I'm Chris Shovlin with Coach Toole, and we talked about your point guards and we talked about the physicality of games. Let's go down underneath the backboard and talk about the guys doing all the banging down there. Again, it's getting rougher and tougher as the season goes on, not to get into a rhyming match.
Yeah, I think our front court guys, as we've alluded to, it's probably the most depth we've had in the front court, in a number of years. And I think Yanis and Malik and Charles and Chris have done a really good job. I think they've really been huge pluses for us during the course of this year. As I look across, a number of the conference games that we've played and we've won, I think they've given us a huge boost. Finishing in and around the basket, playing with their back to the basket, obviously offensive rebounding. We've looked at some of those games where, even Thursday night we had 18 offensive rebounds. I mean, that's a huge number, and it really gives you a drastic advantage when you can get that many of your misses and give yourself opportunities for points. Even controlling tempo because you can kick it out, you can run offense again, and the fewer times your team's on, your opponent's on offense, the fewer times they can score. And I think you've seen some of that competition in practice every day. Obviously, getting Malik healthy, adding Yanis to that group, and having Chris and Charles really grow as sophomores now has been a huge positive for our team. And it's provided balance. There's games where maybe teams have done a good job on our perimeter guys, and we can confidently say, okay, let's put it inside for 3 or 4 possessions and let those guys go get a basket or go get fouled or make a play. And I think all of them are willing passers also, which makes it hard for defenses really to send too much help down there. and with the way that they are calling, we talked about the physicality, but the way that they do, call fouls in the post, if you can catch it with 2 feet in the paint, you have a pretty good opportunity to draw some points for your team.
Chris had one of his best games. As a matter of fact, the best game he had this year against Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, he had and it's funny, you talked about starts at the beginning of the show. I thought his first rotation in the game that he didn't really have great energy. I thought he was a little bit sluggish on some communication defensively. I thought he didn't crash real hard. I didn't think he was cutting hard against their zone. And, when he came out, I challenged him a little bit. And I said, Chris, this is where we need to be able to rely on you as somebody that we know is going to be able to come into the game and play with the proper amount of energy. And, his next rotation, he got 2 real big rebounds, and you could just see him being more aggressive. And in that second half, he had a little bit of a 10-0 run of his own where, he really opened the game up with the offensive rebound putback. He had a short little jumper. He had a 3 from the corner and a free throw, and guys were loving it. And in the locker room after the game, we announced that he had 12 and 6, and everybody went nuts and started mobbing him. So it was really neat to see. And those are the kind of contributions you're going to need as you go through an 18-game conference schedule. You need some guys to step up. We saw Cam Wilbon have a 10 and 7 earlier this year. Yeah. Chris having a 12 and 6. Obviously, some of the guys that we know their names that we talk about every week, the Josh Williams, the Malik Petways, the Matty McConnells, the Giannis Mendes, those guys are, Charles Bain have been consistently towards our scoring. But, when you get a little bit of a boost like that from somebody off your bench, man, it does wonders for your team, and it really helps you win games.
Yeah, Chris was truly spectacular in that game. And Cam Wilbon, that's another name you just mentioned. He's another freshman, Merrillville, Indiana, and he's come in here and played a little older than a freshman would typically play. He looks very confident out on the floor.
He has good poise. He does. I mean, he's a good passer. He has good size at 6'5", with good athleticism and length. And even in that game on Thursday night, he went in and tipped kept a couple offensive rebounds alive. He had a steal, an offensive rebound and a dunk. And he's a guy that we're really high on, and we think has a very high ceiling. I think at points in time during the course of this season, like every freshman, you sit there once in a while and go, oh my God, we got practice again this week. You look at most high school schedules, and a lot of those high school years are winding down. I see, playoffs starting and WPIAL championship starting, and they've only been going at this since maybe the middle of November, right, where our guys have been doing this since August, and now we got 6 games left, 3 regular season weeks left, and it's a much longer time span than they're used to, and the intensity is much higher than they're used to. So but I think everybody in our basketball office and in our program is expecting really good things from Cam during the course of his 4-year career.
With that said, how much in August is basketball? How much of it is conditioning? What's the balance?
Well, obviously this year was a little different for us because we went to Ireland, so there was more basketball, there was some more practice, and we had to take a little bit of time off when we got back just to kind of give them the break that they need, because these guys are going almost year-round at this point in time, with spring workouts, with summer workouts. It's hard to find some downtime, whether they're lifting, whether they're doing individuals, whether they're doing team stuff. But as you hit the middle of September, you're getting going pretty full pace, and then the way practice, it used to start October 15th. Now it's starting that 40 days or 42 days before your first game, which they move that up a week. So it's now almost September 27th, September 28th. You're starting legit practice, and that's September, October, November, December, January. We're in February. You're looking at 6 months of pretty intensive stuff for guys that maybe used to do it for 3 or 4 months, and even that, maybe the 2 days a week that you get all fired up is game day, and those other days you can kind of coast through because you're better than the guys you're practicing against.
How tough is it right now? Because it is grinding, and there's no doubt about it. And basketball is not a sprint, it's a marathon. We've all heard that old adage, and old adages are always true, but it is a grind right now to be a college basketball player because you're not yet at the playoffs, the season's not yet over, but you have so many games behind you, 20 plus games behind you already.
Yeah, 25 games we've played already, and it's I hate to use the word grind because we are playing basketball, but it can be taxing. it's mentally taxing. Can you get yourself up to come to practice every day, to come to compete every day? The guys that do that are the ones that separate themselves and have great careers. And it's not easy to walk into most college gyms around the country at this point in time, and you're going to find demanding coaches, and you're going to find grueling practice plans, and even though we're trying to be out there for a shorter amount of time, like today, we probably only did about an hour of basketball and a half hour of shooting. It's not like you're just standing around shooting in your backyard. It's a minute of this shot, a minute of that shot. How many did you get? How many did you make? Who you're competing against, and so everything we do is trying to be with that level of intensity that it's going to prepare them for the game.
We didn't even talk about the team on the other side of the court from you, the team on the opposite bench. They're coming in here, and they see a first-place team. You put a big target on your back, and deservedly so. That's what first-place teams earn. At the same time, some of the teams at the bottom of the barrel are going to come at you full tilt, and that's what we saw against Central Connecticut State the other night.
For sure, and Central's a very talented team. I mean, Tyler Cole, I think, is maybe the best player in our league, one of the best players in our league. He averaged 29 last week, and got his 6th Player of the Week award from the NEC. And he's a crazy mismatch. He's a 6'5" forward who's great with his back to the basket. He handles the ball. He plays in ball screens. He can make threes. That was the thing that he did, I think, that hurt us the most. He made 3 threes in that game, and that's usually, I don't want to say it's not his strength, but if you're favoring a shot for him to shoot a contested 3, you'd be happier with than him operating in and around the basket, because he's that good in and around the basket. And I know Matty was frustrated because I thought he had good contests on all 3 of those threes, but Cole has the ability to be able to make those shots even when they are well guarded. And so Central's a very good team, and I think the current roster we have right now, some of those guys haven't been in that first place spot and don't understand that everybody's getting up a little bit extra for them, and everybody's gearing up a little bit more for them. And sometimes I say to our guys, when you drive in and people see the UPMC Event Center in the front of campus, they go, "Who do these guys think they are?" And that gives them a little more fodder, to say these guys are, think they're better than they are, or they are, entitled or spoiled, and you got to step on the court and you got to be able to compete each and every time the game asks you to do it.
All right, it's the Andy Toole Radio Show. We're live tonight at the Yard in North Fayette. Good to have a nice crowd in here tonight. Everybody having dinner and checking out the show, checking out the monitors and the TVs all over the place, and we've got a good crowd here, and glad that you're with us on the radio side or on the internet as well, on the iHeart Radio app. Chris Shovelin here with Coach Toole. Our next segment will be Toole Off the Court. We're going to ask Andy questions about everything except basketball when we return. And again, if you want to tweet us a question, use the hashtag AskToole. It's the Andy Toole Radio Show live on ESPN Pittsburgh and the iHeart Radio app, keyword RMU. Welcome back to the Yard here in North Fayette. It is the Andy Toole Radio Show live from the Yard, as it is each and every Monday night at 7 o'clock. We stick around until 8. We talk Robert Morris basketball. But for one segment in every show, every Monday night, we take Coach Toole off the court and we ask him questions about everything except basketball. And I had a lot of questions tweeted and texted to me today.
I'm ready.
First of all, question number 1 from Jim in Grapeville. He asks, since you went to the University of Pennsylvania, Pats or Genos? Now, I know we've had this discussion in prior years.
We have.
On the Coach Toole Show.
Jim must not listen all the time.
He must not. But I'm glad he's listening tonight. I'm glad he's tuned in. But Jim in Grapeville wants to know which you prefer. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a pass on this one, because you do have a story, from what I understand, about a Philadelphia tour.
I do. So Genos is the answer for me. That's my personal preference. And when we played Drexel this year, I took our 3 managers who traveled with us, Sam Fredlin, Matt Dill, and Dylan Graffius, who sometimes you forget, none of the 3 of them had ever been to Philadelphia. So the three of them are all Western PA guys. And when we got there, I said, okay, come with me. We're going to go get a cheesesteak. So we drove down to South Philly. I took them on a little bit of tour. We drove down to South Philly.
29th and Passyunk, right?
10th and Wharton.
10th and Wharton.
10th and Wharton.
My mistake then.
So we get Gino's cheesesteak, which they thought was amazing, and then we drove over to South Street. My favorite pizza place ever is in Philly, Lorenzo's on South Street. It's like third or I guess it's 4th and South.
Wait a minute, you're a New York guy, and your favorite pizza place is in Philadelphia?
It is, and it's these giant slices, and it's a sweet sauce, so it's delicious. And so we got a slice after we had our cheesesteak. Dennis Katurik, our strength guy, didn't check our calorie count that day, but it wasn't pretty. But it's every once in a while when I was in school at Penn, we would make that Gino's to Lorenzo's run if we wanted to just binge eat for a while. And so I took him on it, and we kind of toured our way back up to West Philly where we were the hotel was, and those guys were. It was great. It was cool to drive with them down there and have them kind of do the cheesesteak deal, then get a slice, see South Street. We drove by City Hall, all that kind of stuff. They were asking questions about kind of the layout of Philly, and all three concluded, and I don't know if they'd say this publicly, but that Philly didn't seem like that bad a place. So I don't know if they can say that. I don't know if they can say that back home in their respective homes, but
they certainly won't say it tonight because the Penguins are playing the Flyers right now too.
Correct.
So yeah, I can understand that. I have another question that was sent to us. If you were an assistant college football coach, not a basketball coach as you are, but if you were an assistant college football coach, which coach would you want to work for and why?
Well, I think one of the most entertaining coaches to work for would have to be Herm Edwards, right?
Oh, yeah.
At Arizona State. I mean, that would be just day after day of entertainment. As a Notre Dame football fan, I would have to say Brian Kelly would be a guy that I would love to work for. I would assume working for him would be challenging. Mm-hmm. It sounds like he's on top of his guys a great deal. Can I say Bernard Clark? Can I throw Bernard Clark out there?
Bernard in there, yeah.
Bernard is. I go watch their practices, and he. He's got the music going. He's got the energy going. He's got it all going. And I'm looking forward to the team that he puts out on the field this year. Now that he's kind of been able to have 1 year under his belt. Because I think Bernard does a great job.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Here's another one. If you could bring only one unlimited food item. Now we're getting back to food, and you're counting calories with the Lorenzo's and Gino's cheesesteaks. But if you could bring just one unlimited food item with you to a deserted island, what would it be and why?
See here. See, the sick part is that I'm already thinking of questions to kind of get some more detail on how this whole deserted island thing will work out. Like if I bring a hot food, am I going to have an opportunity to keep it fresh? Because I don't want to bring something as stale as pretzels or crackers or am I going to have the ability to keep something warm, keep something fresh? Because for me, if I could have an unlimited food, it might be French fries.
Okay. Right.
French fries are like the death of me. I really, every once in a while, have a craving for McDonald's French fries, or nothing to me is as good as a big burger and fries.
Like when you go to the beach, you go to Thrasher's or places like that, or
yeah. I don't mind. I don't.
You just like fast food fries.
French fries and ketchup.
Okay.
Is to me is incredible. So I think fries would be my unlimited supply. I don't know how long I would last. I'd probably get pretty dehydrated out there on that deserted island. Just eating fries day and night.
Yeah, a lot of potatoes. Anyway, let's see. What is, Coach, your favorite day of the year?
My favorite day of the year? Christmas is one of my favorite days of the year. I'll say that. First day of practice is one of my favorite days of the year. Do I have to say my anniversary is one of my favorite days of the year? Well, Brooks has swim lessons right now, so I don't think she's listening. I don't think she's listening.
You got to pass on that too.
Yeah, June 3rd, my anniversary. It's got to be my favorite day of the year.
Okay, all right, that's beautiful.
There you go.
Very sentimental guy.
My mom will like that.
All right, this question comes from Joey from the Bronx.
Oh, Joey.
We have a lot of listeners on the internet.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, one of his favorite movies is Shawshank Redemption. So he asks, how long do you think you could last in a maximum security county prison? And what skill would you work on while incarcerated?
I don't think I'd make it a night. I'm not going to lie. It's funny. We try and preach toughness to our team, but I don't think I would make it very long in prison. You've seen my physique isn't exactly prison ready. I don't know what I would have to really figure something out if I was sent to prison. I don't know how long I would make it, in all honesty. What skill, if I made it more than a week and I actually had the opportunity to start trying to learn a skill, I don't know what skill. I mean, I think I have no ability to do anything that's handy.
Yeah. So
that
like
makes it hard.
Carpentry's out.
Yeah.
Mechanics.
Carpentry, mechanics, ceramics. I have no. 7th grade, I was on the potter's wheel for one marking period in art class, and my mom said she loved some of the slanted ashtrays that I made. they were pretty poor at best. So
I'm sure she still has them in the house.
I'm not sure what skill I would acquire. Maybe I would try and get a degree or something. Maybe try and get my law degree while I was in there. That might be a better pursuit for me than trying to figure out how to whittle and do carpentry.
Definitely go to the academic route then. Okay. All right. Final question from our listeners here on Toole Off the Court tonight. It's the Andy Toole Radio Show, by the way. We're live at the Yard. Our Toole Off the Court segment is the segment in which we ask Andy anything other than basketball. So this last question will do it for the evening. Who is your favorite non-basketball athlete of all time?
Lawrence Taylor.
New York Giants.
New York Giant.
Linebacker.
I mean, that's in my. I think everybody, as Jim from Grapeville would attest, a Ricky Henderson fan that he is. I think that it's you start watching sports. For me, it was when I was 5, 6, 7 years old.
Sure.
And you get into your hometown teams or whomever you like, and you just have players that you kind of see, and they just they stick with you. And Lawrence Taylor was, maybe one of the greatest defensive players of all time. I think Belichick said, if he had to take one player first in the history of NFL football, he would take Lawrence Taylor. And he said that this year. And so as a 6-year-old, when you're watching this guy just fly around the field and have this larger-than-life persona, that really, really sticks with you. And I was fortunate because, in 1986, as a Met fan, they won the World Series, and then, that year the Giants were great, and in January that '87, they won the Super Bowl. So, those teams were the 2 first teams that I remember, following.
Sure.
As a 6-year-old, and watching both those teams win championships. A lot of those players, I immediately go back to, whether it's Doc Gooden or Lenny Dykstra, or and they were all teams made up of incredible characters, which made it even more enjoyable to try and figure out what was going on the field sometimes as a young kid. But I can't tell you the number of times I watched the '86 Mets and the '86 Giants commemorative videos. A Year to Remember was the Mets video title.
Well, those are the ones that came with your Sports Illustrated subscription?
For sure. Okay. And then the '86 Giants video was Giants Among Men.
Okay.
And if I ever faked an illness, I was watching those about 2 times during my stay-home sick day, for sure. Because those were just the teams that I started to follow. So Lawrence Taylor, I think, is one of my favorite, non-basketball athletes of all time.
All right, so Coach Toole isn't in today. He called off Giants and Mets. All right, that'll do it for the Ask Toole segment here and Toole Off the Court. And we're going to come back and get serious again and talk some basketball, because there are a couple of huge games this week in the NEC involving the Robert Morris Colonials. That first one is Thursday night on the road at Mount St. Mary's. We'll come back and talk with Andy Toole, the head coach of the Robert Morris Colonials, after these words on ESPN Pittsburgh and the iHeartRadio app, keyword RMU. Time for our final segment of the Andy Toole Radio Show here tonight, live from the Yard here in North Fayette and the Pool City Plaza, just off the Parkway West near Robinson. Chris Shublin with head coach Andy Toole, and it's that time of the program when we get ready for the weekend. It's a huge, huge weekend. Colonials in first place in the Northeast Conference and a first place tie tie with the St. Francis University Red Flash. Both clubs are 8-4, and before you see them on Saturday on their court at the DeGaulle Arena in Loretto, Pennsylvania, you have to travel down to Mount St. Mary's, just south of the Mason-Dixon line, and that's going to be a tough one. It always is, and I realize Mount St. Mary's is bringing up the rear right now, 3-9, but that is one of the potentially best ball clubs in this league coming up in the near future, and they're starting to really come together. They're gelling.
Oh, they're playing really well. I mean, they went to Sacred Heart last Saturday and were able to beat Sacred Heart, who was in second place, and they were up 17 in the second half of that game. You know, they really are being led by Vado Morse, who's, you know, I'm not sure who can catch him for Rookie of the Year race in the Northeast Conference. He's been, I think, 5-time NEC Rookie of the Year, playing with incredible confidence. He's a blur with the ball, getting into the paint, and he's shooting it at a really high rate. And so he's a tough guard. You know, they're a super young team. Dan Engelstad, who took over this year, he is, you know, was left with, I think, one guy that played double-digit minutes on that team. And so, you know, they've gotten better and better each and every game this year. He's done a great job with the team, but all those guys are brand new. And now, you know, they're really starting to play, I think, the way he envisioned them playing when the year started. They're competing defensively. They have really good size. Malik Jefferson is one of their front court guys who does an excellent job. He's a 6'8", strong, physical freshman forward. You know, Jalen Gibbs is a shooter for them, who's you know, a transfer from Drake University, and you know, so they have some really good pieces, and they're playing really well, and our guys know that. You know, obviously when we played them here the first time, we were fortunate to be able to get a 1-point win against them. And our guys understand that it's going to be quite a challenge down in Emmitsburg on Thursday night.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It always seems like when Robert Morris and Mount St. Mary's play, it just goes crazy. I mean, it's great basketball. It's competitive basketball. It always comes down to the wire, and very seldom in the entire body of work between these two ball clubs has anybody really blown anybody off the floor.
No, just both teams compete too hard and have been well coached over the years, and the players, you know, understand that it's you know, a rivalry within the Northeast Conference. Certainly in my 12 years here, you know, we've had, you know, incredible games with them that we've alluded to over a number of years. Your old you know, compatriot Roy Siegler would probably he'd probably say the same about.
He would.
You know,
he loves the series.
He loves this series. He drives up here for the games, and he doesn't even do them on the radio anymore.
No,
he just comes up because it's Robert Moore's Mount St. Mary's. Yeah. So I'm sure Thursday will be no different. And like I said, you know, Dan Engelstad and his staff has his team playing with a lot of confidence, and they're playing hard.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned Roy. He was the head coach of Boston University at one time.
I mean, yeah, don't start. Every time we see him, he tells us the same thing. Just ask him.
Yep, he will tell you, no doubt about it. Of course, on Saturday, again, this is a very difficult road trip, as they all are, but this one is a tough one. You have to play at St. Francis in Loretto. They got you by 3 the first time around. Very competitive ball game. You had a big lead on them, and they came back, and the last 5 minutes of the first half turned the ball game around, and then it was a dogfight the rest of the way.
Yeah, and we'll see if we've learned lessons from that first game. You know, obviously, Keith Braxton, Jamal King are guys that, you know, headline St. Francis's roster. Isaiah Blackman, you know, having an outstanding season after coming back from an ACL injury, and they're the preseason favorite for a reason, and they're playing probably their best basketball of the year. They're on I believe, a 4-game win streak right now. 5 now. Is it 5 now? And you know, they're really, you know, scoring the ball efficiently, and everybody on their roster, you know, seems to be kind of fitting into their role, and you know, I'm sure there'll be a great crowd there Saturday night as we prepare to play against them. But right now, we, you know, obviously have to focus on Mount St. Mary's and make sure that we have, you know, 2 more good days of practice before we get on the road for the game on Thursday.
Yeah, it's amazing how, you know, basketball teams, it takes some teams a while to get together, and then some teams, they just keep going, and it's that time of the year where everybody's starting to really gel. And I think the pressure is on those teams in the second flank right now to try to stay alive to make the playoff chase.
Well, I mean, everyone's still so jumbled. I mean, 2 teams at 8-4, 2 teams at 7-5. You know, you got a couple teams at 6-6. You know, each and every way down the standings. You know, one weekend could flip teams from, you know, 8th or 9th place all the way maybe into the top 4 and host in a quarterfinal game. And that's the thing I think people don't always realize about the Northeast Conference is with, you know, all of the conference tournament games games being at the higher seed, you're really fighting for home games. You know, it's not like everybody's going down to Charlotte for the ACC tournament, or everyone's going to Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament, and you're wearing your home or your away jersey and playing on a neutral court. I mean, you're walking into some environments that are hostile to try and survive and extend your season, which certainly makes it a lot more difficult than maybe playing in front of a partisan crowd, you know, at a neutral site. So all these games are so critical. All these possessions are so critical, and trying to make sure your team's playing its best as you come down the stretch here is really key. And it's a hard balance sometimes to find. And I think every coach, you know, is trying to figure out what buttons to push right now so that their team is as ready as they can be with 6 games remaining.
Since you've been in the NEC, it's been the highest seed gets the home court advantage. But I can remember back in the day where they tried to go to a neutral court. It really doesn't work as well with the low majors and mid majors as it does with the high majors going to a neutral area.
And there's no doubt about it. I remember watching those games at Sovereign Bank Arena and in Trenton there, and you know, I think Matt Millett still has a ticket stub from one of his trips down there. But I remember, you know, the Monmouth game where, you know, Rashawn Johnson, you know, in NAC history came back, you know, and scored 20 or 30 in the second half, it seemed like, and they stormed back and got a victory. But you know, the home site is one of the best things we do every year when we get together with our coaches. They talk about you know, that is something that everybody loves, and not to change that. And I think you know, if you're a part of some of those atmospheres, quarterfinal, semifinal, you know, in those championship atmospheres, that's what, you know, college basketball is all about. You know, kind of as we alluded to in the beginning of the show. And you know, you get those games that mean so much to those kids. It's raw emotion, and you know, everybody's so into it because that NCAA tournament bid is something that's so close. But you know, if you don't get it, it's heartbreaking.
You know, these 2 games in particular, they are just magnified by the fact that there's not a heck of a lot to do around the areas where these schools are located. I mean, Mount St. Mary's is 15 miles south of Gettysburg, and Gettysburg in the wintertime is just, it's a ghost town, literally. And I don't mean that, you know, to sound mean as far as
you
the
said
Civil
it,
War is concerned.
I did not say
but
that.
In all seriousness, there's hardly anybody there. There aren't very many distractions. There are no distractions up in Loretto, Pennsylvania. I know you stay in Altoona these days, but when you walk into the basketball court, all of a sudden the lights are on, the electricity is buzzing, and you can feel it pulsating in those gyms because there's nothing else to do in those towns, and people come out for these
They get
games.
great community support. I mean, both programs get great community support. They do a great job of getting their students out, especially, you know, when we go down to Mount. I mean, we've had some of, you know, the most, you know, energetic and intense environments when we've gone down there and played, and you know, the same when we go up to PA. I mean, it's you know, it's what makes it fun. And I think that if you're a competitor, you love to be in those kind of environments, and you love being in there with your team as a coach and seeing how they respond. And it's you know, it's what makes it a lot of fun.
I probably just ticked off the chambers of commerce of both of those communities, but that's the way it is.
You're going to have to deal with them when you get there.
I guess I am, and I'll be there too. Jim Elias and I will be on the call for both ball games. Mount St. Mary's this coming Thursday night, and St. Francis University in Loretto on Saturday night. And that'll do it for tonight's Andy Toole radio show. We want to thank the folks out here at the Yard in North Fayette and Robinson. We'll be back here next Monday night, but 2 big games on the road and 2 big rivals on the road as well this week. You'll hear both games right here on the home voice of the Robert Morris University Colonials. That's ESPN Pittsburgh and the iHeartRadio app, keyword RMU. See you then.